knowledge is to be pursued. Knowledge is to be acquired, applied, and then shared. If it works for you and you only keep it to yourself, you become like a disconnected socket in the entire calculation of a generation. That's why on this channel, we are going to go through the entire Bible, book to book, chapter to chapter, through the kingdom lens. Now, those who are tired of a religion, you have found yourself a new home. Consider subscribing, and I also want to learn from you in the comment section. We are going to begin with the book of Matthew. The book of Matthew is the first book in the entire New Testament. The New Testament has 27 books. The first 4 books are called the Gospels, and then we have the 5th book, which is called the Acts of Apostles. Actually, it's the revelation, the manifestation of the early church. And then we have the 21 letters, also called epistles. 14 are ascribed to Paul. He wrote those letters to different destinations. And then we have 7 general letters. And then we have the last book, the Apocalypse, called the book of Revelation. The book of Matthew was written by Matthew, who was one of the Jesus disciples, the former tax collector. It has got 28 chapters. Now, the first chapter has got 2 segments. The first segment, it deals with the genealogy of Jesus, and then the second segment, which deals with the birth of Jesus Christ. Why is it necessary, and why is it recorded? Why is it necessary for us to learn who gave birth to who begot who, before the coming of Jesus Christ? When it comes to dealing with the Bible, there is one significant figure you have to pay attention to. And this figure is the man by the name David. Among all men in the Bible, this is the only man that God himself said, "This is the man after my own heart." Now, other men were after my handiworks. Other men were after God's miracles and God's blessings. It is only David who God said, "This is the man after my own heart." The word heart simply means mind. So David was after God's mind. David was after God's original ideas. David was after God's thoughts. What was God thinking? And if you extrapolate the book of Psalms, there are certain tenets that becomes conspicuous that we have to pay attention to. Those are the tenets that will help us understand and know why it was necessary for the genealogy of Jesus Christ to be written and for us to learn about it. The first tenet is God's purpose and will. The second tenet is about God's plan and his intent. The third tenet is about God's strategy. If you read the book of Psalms, if you extrapolate the book of Psalms, there is something you will understand. There is something we come to appreciate. And number one is that God's original purpose, God's original will was kingdom extension. God had his own kingdom in the invisible realm. He had his own citizenry, the angels and the spirit beings. God had his own army led by Angel Michael. He had his own communication department led by Angel Gabriel. God had his own government. But because God is love, he wanted to extend, because God is love and God is king, he wanted to extend his kingdom from the invisible space to the visible space. He wanted to extend his kingdom from the spiritual realm to the physical realm. That was his original purpose and intent. But God wanted to extend his kingdom to the physical space without necessarily having to come himself. So his plan was, he will create a family of children. He will create a family of sons called man. And he will use those men to fulfill his original mandate. And his strategy was, after creating this family of children called man, he will give them his spirit, so that they are forever in tune to the heavenly, to the heavens, to understand his will, to understand his purpose and to understand his intentions and carry out his will and his intention in the physical space. In essence, make heaven, make earth just like it is in heaven. That was God's original plan, God's original intent, and God's original strategy. So God created the physical space called earth. God created the plants, the animals, the mountains, the rivers, the water. He created the planet. He created the earth. God created man. He gave him the Holy Spirit. He put him in the Garden of Eden, and then he gave man the mandate. He told man, now dominate this for me. Everything was moving smoothly, but along the way, man did something. Along the way, man disobeyed God. Along the way, man rebelled against God. Along the way, man declared independence from the government of God, from the heavenly government of God. Now, when man disobeyed God, the whole program fell apart. If you read your Bible, you will realize that God made a promise to a woman, God made a promise to man, God made a promise to the devil. And he promised the devil that I will put enmity between you and the woman, between her seed and your seed. And her seed will crush your head, and you will crush his heel. Everything that happened in the Old Testament, after Genesis 3:15, after God making a promise to the devil, everything that happened from there to Malachi was God trying to fulfill that promise. Was God trying to make sure that that promise comes to fruition. The coming of Jesus, that was the birth of the coming of Jesus Christ. You see, we all know that a woman has no seed. It is interesting. A woman has no seed. But God tells the devil that the seed of a woman will come and crush your head. What he was saying is, there is someone who is going to come through a woman that will not need the participation of man. I will send my son through a woman without the participation of a man. So he will be sinless. And that person is coming to crush your head, to take the authority that you have usurped from man back to man. And you will crush his heel, which happened on the cross. After the fall of man, man continued to multiply in sin. And after 1,000 years, God finds a righteous man in the name of Noah. And he comes to Noah. He has a covenant, he has an agreement with Noah. He drowns the whole human race, and he starts a new human race through Noah and his family. And after 1,000 years again, he comes to a man called Abraham. He has a pact, he has a covenant with Abraham. He makes a covenant with Abraham. He agrees with Abraham that he will make a nation, a blessed nation through Abraham. God is king on a nation, a blessed nation through Abraham. He confirms the same to Moses. He tells Moses and the children of Israelites in the desert that you shall become a nation of priests and kings. You shall become to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. God is after a nation. So the genealogy of Jesus Christ, it is imperative for us to understand it because it shows the pathway for the coming of Jesus Christ, the pathway for the coming of the Messiah, all the way from Adam to the promises he made to Abraham, to the promises he made to David. So it is the pathway of the coming of Jesus Christ. That's why it is documented and it is first in the book of Mathew. It is a testament that reveals that truly this is he who was prophesied. This is he who was prophesied in the Old Testament to fulfill the prophecies and also to show the pathway of the coming of Jesus Christ. In the second episode, we are going to tackle the second segment of the first chapter of the book of Matthew, and that is the birth of Jesus Christ. We are going to look at it from the lens of the kingdom. Thank you so much for this first episode. If you liked it, consider subscribing. See you next time. Until next time.